chess videos. I'm out here in my lovely backyard up at a place called Kep's Crossing. It's a pretty little place. It's a nice camping spot. Memorial Day weekend, I've got to do some chess videos. I'm looking at the King's Gambit, and I found several games on the King's Gambit that is interesting. This isn't a game, it's not an opening that is played a lot in the upper levels. We club players, we love these kind of gambits because they offer so many interesting games. This particular game I'm going to show you is from Bronstein and Dubbinen. It's the USSR Championship in 1947. Now, Bronstein, from the years 1945 to 1947, he won 10 out of 10 King's Gambits, and I'm trying to round up those games so that I can play through them. He plays them as white, so he shows you how to play this gambit, and he's very, very adept. This particular game was really, quite frankly, somewhat shocking to me. Because of the way he played it, I would have gotten completely discouraged because I would have realized I am so far down in power that there's no way I could win. That's not how Bronstein looked at this at all. He had a way of playing the King's Gambit very, very powerfully. Don't you love this combination? Nice flowery Hawaiian shirt and an Idaho cowboy hat. Oh my, you've never seen that in a chess video before, have you? Okay, and he's opening up typical King's Gambit. He's going to offer the Gambit pawn, and Dubbinen accepted the pawn, so he's going to block this with the knight. And immediately the G5 pawn comes down, and the H4 pawn comes to challenge the G5 pawn, and then the G5 pawn moves down again to challenge the knight. And this is really typical King's Gambit opening as far as the full process. I know several have departed and found different views and paths, but this is quite interesting to see how in 1947 how Bronstein handled this. Now you can see that the entire King's side is where all the action is going, and maybe this is why the King's Gambit isn't played so much in Grandmaster chess these days. Who knows? In the upper levels. Well, he's going to develop a power. Pawn, bishop c4, and this bishop move is really rather typical in a lot of the King Gambits that I found so far. And the idea here is this f7 pawn is really getting hit hard by the knight, the bishop and all. And so one option is to pull the rook up to guard that pawn. That's really kind of interesting. And this was done as far back as the early 1800s. And I've got a couple of really, really early King Gambit games that are fun that I'll show you too. But as we study openings, you know, like I say, these videos are my chess journey from a beginner to hopefully, if I've got what it takes to get mastery. You know, 2300 rating, which I have no idea if I'm capable of. I'm giving it my best shot. So I'm not giving you all of this information because I'm the expert. No, I'm the student. I'm the one taking the journey. I just want to video this journey. And one of the keys I've been told and I've read is that you need to analyze thousands of Grandmaster games. So that's what my videos are doing, right? I'm analyzing the Grandmaster games. And of course, I'm analyzing them as an amateur. I can't give you the in-depth Grandmaster analysis. I don't have that knowledge. But the Grandmaster games are so important that we've got to at least find a way for us beginners and intermediates to understand. They say, yeah, you got to study the Grandmaster games, but they make so many wild, weird moves that you kind of get lost. So this is more or less me trying to analyze a Grandmaster game so that as an amateur, I can understand what is going on. That's what I'm doing in my videos, right? I'm not here making videos because I am the master and you are the student. No, I'm the student and I'm just showing what it takes, right? I'm playing a lot of online chess. You guys are misunderstanding something. Then he comes up to bishop h6. A lot of people are beginning to play me online, and if you guys think you can beat me, you have something to crow about, dream on. I'm not the one to chase down to beat. I'm not going to get you any better by beating me, although every game of chess we play gets us that much closer to chess mastery. So these guys are the ones to study, right? Bishop h6. Now, he's coming up, he's defending this pawn. He's got a pawn under siege, more or less. So you can see this is kind of a wild, weird setup compared to the normal chess openings, such as the Queen Gambit and Queen Gambit Declined, and the Gioco Piano and the Roy Lopez and all that. This really does a lot of wing movement, even though the center's open. Maybe that's why in the upper echelons of chess nowadays, this isn't such a played game. But you can see Bronstein, this particular opening, Bronstein is bringing out his pieces, and Dubinin is also bringing out his pieces. They're going to have a tough game. So here comes the battle for the center, and this is not addressed yet. Now, looking at this, these two pawns can be extremely dangerous coming down, can't they? If you're going to play the King's Gambit, you really have to keep your eye on these pawns. And of course, the bishop here keeps the eye on that pawn. The queen here keeps an eye on that pawn. So no, he's not directly bringing his pieces to address those pawns or to take those pawns yet, but he is keeping an eye on them. In the meantime, black is also going to keep his eye on these pawns, because technically this is a dangerous pass pawn. There is no pawn, even though it's doubled. Isn't that interesting? A doubled pawn, but don't tell me that pawn's weak. No, not with its brother right next to it like this, being supported by a pawn. Those are something to keep your eye on. So, what does Bronstein do at this point? This becomes very interesting. What he's going to do, and I've noticed this in a lot of David Bronstein's games, he will undermine the position. He's not worried so much about material, but he will undermine the position of his opponent. And how he does this is he takes that pawn. He takes the weak f7 pawn. And you say, well, that's ridiculous, it's covered. That's true, it is covered. But he took it anyway. And what happens here, very interestingly, he gives up a knight, and he gives up a bishop for a pawn and a rook. And you think, wait a minute, that's not good strategy. It is. It is, though. As we play through the game, you'll see what it does. One, it prevents the king from castling. He's going to stay in the center. Two, there is no cover for the king. That king is wide open and available to come and get, right? So, yes, he's down the exchange. He's down a piece. The imbalance is Dubinin has more pieces than Bronstein right now. Dubinin has a potential, very dangerous passed pawn situation here that Bronstein's going to have to keep under control. The compensation, what the Grandmasters call compensation, is, yes, he's down a piece, but the king is so easy to get to. And again, he's got two very powerful central pawns of his own that he can march up here to help. He can help coordinate the pieces with the pawns to get that king. So that's Bronstein's version of his compensation for losing the exchange. It puts black in a bad position. That's real interesting to look at, isn't it? These pawns can be very dangerous in an endgame. So he's got them somewhat guarded, but Bronstein also has them hit. But he's going to start taking care of business, and he takes the pawn with bishop f4. So he's going to eliminate any endgame problems that he might have. Now, of course, what this does is it brings out bishop, takes the bishop. So Bronstein is down pieces, but he's eliminating the most powerful part of black's position, the pawns. This is a real interesting strategy. He's down material, but he's destroying the position of his opponent. This is very important for him to do. He castles, and granted, you know, this king is wide open. Well, Bronstein's king isn't exactly under terrific cover either. That's the actual basis of the king's gambit. It opens up the kings so that usually this is a big attacking game, right? I mean, that makes sense. If the kings are wide open, go get them. Bronstein's king isn't nearly as open as Dubbinen, however. Not even close. Well, the queen dodges down here and takes H4, takes the pawn. Now you can see Dubbinen is getting great power here, and he's starting to protect the two pawns that are coming down to the king. He's got a king-side attack, very serious potential bad one, right? So Bronstein has to stay on his toes. What do you do when your opponent is attacking on the wing? Attack in the center. This is the idea. So he's got the rook. He takes the bishop with the rook. He eliminates one of the attackers of his king side and one of the defenders of those two pawns, right? So he's doing this. Check to the king. King has to go to G7. And then queen comes up here to D2. So Bronstein is developing. What he does is he's opening the H-file for his other rook to get in. You notice the Grandmasters always do this. And it's one thing to know this intellectually, it's another thing to put it into your own games, and it takes practice. This is why we play chess, you know, right? He is bringing every piece in. He's not going to leave himself undeveloped. This takes the entire army, and that is what he's doing. Hence his move, Queen D2. Not only does it give him a diagonal up toward the king, the rook has the open file, the only open file, incidentally, but it also allows his other rook to come sliding in. That's excellent chess. If and when we play, if we can try to emulate this, this is the power of studying the Grandmaster games. It's one thing to know it, it's another thing to do it, though. You can see how the Grandmasters do it, and I can make videos and commentary about, oh, look how great and grand they are. But when it comes to doing it in our games, sometimes we just forget to. This is why we practice chess if we want to get good. Dubbinen supports the center pawn. This pawn will help somewhat keep Bronstein's pawns in somewhat of a check, because quite frankly, yes, Dubbinen has some powerful pawns here, but Bronstein's center pawns are quite powerful too, and Dubbinen has nothing. You can see his whole king side is just basically completely bare. The king's guarding that knight well, isn't he? Should be the other way around, but yeah, we'll see, we'll see. Hang on, the game's not over yet. Well, sure enough, rook A to F1, and now he's got the only open file, and it's powerful. And here's what's interesting. Bronstein is down in material, but his position compensates for that, doesn't it? Look at Dubbinen's position. He can't get his rook out yet. I mean, his bishop isn't even developed. He's got 2 moves before his rook can come into this game. Bronstein is already master of the F-file, coming directly at that king. Bronstein also is master with his queen of the central, of the diagonal, I should say. And this knight, you push a pawn, this knight can hurry up and jump right into this king side. So, yes, he's down material, but his position is utterly a winning position. This is fabulous Grandmaster chess. Nobody was better than Bronstein at this. He didn't care about material. He wanted the position because it gave him the initiative. It gave him the attack, right? That's what he's doing here. So, shut up and start showing the game, dude. Knight to D8. He's going to try to relocate his knights over to here. Absolutely. He wants to do this. And sure enough, here comes Bronstein. Centralize the knight. Very, very powerful knight. You can see the difference, can't you? The knight here, using the Jeremy Silman imbalances idea, the knight here on a central outpost. Now, it's not an uncontested outpost. That's true. But his knight here is so superior to either one of these knights here, right? That's good chess. That's what you want to do. You want to make your pieces superior to your opponents. His rooks are absolutely beyond that pathetic thing stuck in the corner. And now again, Dubman has put another piece on, keeping that rook out of play for a while. This is not looking good. Dubman's not going to leave that knight there. He better not. But to put it there in the first place is not a good thing. Well, he does bring his bishop out. One more piece out so that he can pull his rook out, and he has to get that rook out. And sure enough, Bronstein says, look, I have central, not only do I have central possession of the more important squares in the center, but I'm going to push my pawns and come at you that way. This is really wonderful. And he's got more space on the center there too. Well, the D, and the reason Dubman pushed this is to try to make sure that Bronstein does not keep the pawn pair. Because a pawn pair in tandem going through the center can completely wipe you out. So he pushed his D pawn, of course, so that he could take out the pawn pair, because he figured Bronstein was going to push the pawns, of course. That's what you always want to do if possible. And look at that. Now he's got a single pawn. It's an isolated single pawn. But the thing is, it's not blocked. Granted, an isolated pawn can be a weakness if your opponent can block it. And the most important square in front of the isolated pawn is the square right in front of it, right? And he's got control of that square for the time being. But Dubman has to move these pieces to get his rook into play. So at the moment, he's got this square controlled in front of this isolated pawn. It's not necessary for Bronstein to try to push this pawn right now, but he's going to eventually. Right? That's kind of how that works. And bishop comes to c6. Now he's trying to centralize a little better. He's trying to give his bishop more scope, and he really needs to. He is hitting the knight, and he is coming across to here, down to this pawn, and to here, and the queen's over to here. So that's really, at this point, that's a pretty good spot for his bishop. I mean, it's the best spot he can find at this point for his bishop, I would argue. And then Bronstein pushes that pawn anyway. e6, and you say, wait a minute, dude. He doesn't have it protected. Yes, it's a powerful passed pawn, but the knight can take it and threaten the rook and all that. Push the pawn anyway. That's how Bronstein handles this. Well, the bishop is going to swap that knight. That knight is too powerful. A centralized knight like that, being able to hop over here to the king side with the doubled rooks on the file and the queen on the diagonal, yes, exchange that knight. Absolutely. That knight was superior to the bishop. He's trading off a superior piece with his inferior piece. That's good chess on Dubman's part. He had to do that. Seriously. And now here comes Bronstein, rook f7. Pow. Check. Check, oh great king. Now the knight does take the rook. But of course, and again, notice this. Bronstein is not so interested in material. He's not so interested in the exchange. He's lost the exchange a couple of times in this game, but his position is so strong that he can afford to do that. I can't wait till I can get good enough at chess so that I can do this. Because this is a terrific lesson here. This is absolutely outstanding. Now, you don't retake with the pawn. No. That pawn is your outpost, man. That pawn is your foundation of support. You retake with the rook. Look at that position there. Check. Again, a forcing move. The king has to move. King to h8. And yes, I know, you got your bishop here threatening. Bronstein could take care of that bishop. But what's the stronger play here? I mean, look, you're down a couple of exchanges. You're down material. You've got a free bishop, right? Look what Bronstein does. Queen to c3 check. Very interesting how he does this. The knight can come to f6 to block the check. You notice where black's queen is all this time? She's not even in this. She's not even able to participate because she's babysitting these two pawns. Because of his superior position, meaning the open file, he had a great diagonal with the queen. He had two centralized pawns that were so powerful you saw Dubnin had to come after him. But of course, yes. Because his position is so superior, he's relegated that queen away from the fight. She hasn't been able to get in it yet. Well, rook simply takes the knight. And you go, holy cow, dude. The problem is you're down the exchange again. The queen does come into the game. You exchanged a knight for a rook? Yes, because his position is still in the win. And you go, wait a minute, dude. He's got a rook, he's got a bishop, he's got a queen. All Bronstein has is a queen. He can't possibly win this game. Hold it. For us who think materialistically, yeah, that's probably right. But look at what Bronstein does. He takes the queen. His position was so powerful that Dubnin had to give up his queen. Now, he still does have a bishop and a rook, but he can't compete with that queen, putting that king in check. So Bronstein is in great shape. Tell you what, look at that connection. Check to the king and get your bishop. So see, after all, because he has a superior position, Bronstein is able to win this game. The rook still hasn't got off its original square. This entire game, he's been playing a piece down. See, if you don't develop, and then king bops over here to g6, if you don't develop your whole army, you may as well throw some of your pieces off the board. It's the same equivalent as playing a power down, isn't it? That rook still hasn't moved. That's amazing. And then queen comes up here to d7 and Dubnin resigns. The game is completely over at this point. This game, more than any other game that I've seen with the King's Gambit so far, and you need to play through this several times. It's not a matter of winning the exchange every time that wins a game. Bronstein, in a few places in this game, lost the exchange, but he didn't lose it without compensation. Every time he lost the exchange, that is, he lost a more valuable piece than his opponent, Dubnin. He lost a rook but got a knight. He lost a rook but got a bishop. He lost a bishop but got a very important pawn. He kept losing the exchange, but with every loss of his exchange, he was making his position more powerful. That was the reason why he could lose the exchange. He could be down a few powers because his position was so powerful that he had the chance to do tactical work to defeat Dubnin. This is an outstanding example of that kind of a chess game. I love this game. Bronstein was master at this. That's why, you know, he missed the World Chess Championship by just one game. He lost to Botvinnik in the very last game of the match. That's how good Bronstein was. So, if you can get a chance, get Bronstein's games and play through them, man. They're phenomenal. One of my very favorite Grandmasters. I love him. So anyway, there's your chess-a-size for the day. It's a lovely Memorial Day weekend. I'm gonna go do some shopping and find ways to finish my house. I'm working on the inside of my house, trying to do some trim and stuff, and I'll play some more chess. I might be able to get another video made this weekend, but if not, have a great Memorial Day weekend. Have fun, do well, be good, stay happy, and above all, put away that popcorn. And I will see you in the next chess video.